The Strait of Hormuz is no longer just a shipping route. It has become a weapon. And tonight we're looking at a reality that is reshaping global power in real time. Satellite images now confirm something that directly contradicts earlier claims. All 55 crude oil storage tanks on Iran's key export hub remain intact, not destroyed, not crippled, intact. And at the same time, 2 Iranian tankers were seen loading nearly 2.7 million barrels of oil. Let that sink in, because while the United States claims success on the battlefield, Iran is still exporting oil, and not just exporting. Controlling who gets access, Iran's leadership has made something very clear. The Strait of Hormuz is not closed to everyone, it is only closed to their enemies. Ships from countries like China are passing freely. India is passing. Turkey has secured access, but American-linked vessels and those aligned with Washington are facing restrictions. This is not a blockade. This is something far more strategic. It's a selective gatekeeping system, an economic filter, controlled entirely by Iran. And here's where it gets even more interesting. India recently released 3 Iranian oil tankers it had seized. In exchange for safe passage through the Strait, no missiles, no warships, just a transaction. Iran gets its tankers back. India gets access to oil routes. Deal done. That's not war in the traditional sense. That's leverage. And right now, Iran is using that leverage better than anyone expected. Because while the United States spent billions on military operations, Iran turned geography into power. Oil exports from the Gulf have dropped dramatically, by nearly 60%. Not 10%, not 20%, 60%. And in just over 2 weeks, oil prices surged from around $65 to over $105 per barrel. That's a 40% spike. And that spike isn't just numbers on a screen. It translates into higher fuel costs, rising inflation, and economic pressure across the United States, Canada, and Europe. Now here's the twist. China depends heavily on this route. Nearly half of its oil imports pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And yet, China is not being blocked because Iran has made a decision. China is not the enemy. So China's oil flows continue. While Western nations face uncertainty, this isn't a military shutdown. This is a geopolitical sorting system. You either align, stay neutral, or pay the price. And many countries are choosing carefully. Germany has refused to join any US-led naval effort. Greece said no. Italy stepped back. Even the United Kingdom, one of America's closest allies, made it clear it does not want to be drawn into a wider war. Let's pause there, because that's not just hesitation. That's a signal that even America's allies are calculating the cost and deciding this conflict may not be worth it. President Trump reportedly pushed multiple countries to send warships to secure the Strait. But the response? No firm commitments, no unified coalition, no clear plan, and analysts are starting to say it openly. There may not have been a strategy for this scenario at all. Meanwhile, inside the United States, political pressure is building. Senate leaders have criticized the administration's approach, pointing to conflicting statements and unclear objectives. On one hand, there are claims that Iran wants to negotiate. On the other, statements suggesting leadership structures in Iran have been eliminated. Both can't be true at the same time, and that contradiction is now becoming part of the national debate. At the same time, Iran has not asked for a ceasefire, not even once. Instead, Iran is setting conditions. Their message is simple. Any end to this war must guarantee that attacks on Iran will not happen again. That's not a ceasefire request. That's a demand for long-term deterrence. And that puts the United States in a difficult position. Because achieving military objectives, while accepting those conditions, may not be compatible. Meanwhile, the war is expanding. Israel has signaled that operations could continue for weeks. Tensions are rising in Lebanon, and the region is becoming more complex by the day. Now add another layer to this. Every country that negotiates with Iran for access through Hormuz is slowly shifting away from U.S. influence. India has already done it. Turkey has done it. China is in ongoing discussions, potentially even exploring oil transactions outside the U.S. dollar system. And that could be one of the biggest long-term consequences of this entire conflict. Because if oil starts being traded in alternative currencies, the global financial system begins to shift. The US dollar has dominated energy markets for decades. But that dominance depends on one thing: control over global oil trade. And right now, that control is being challenged not through direct confrontation, but through negotiation and access. Iran is not just managing a conflict. It is reshaping relationships, one tanker at a time. Now let's talk about what happens next. There are 3 possible paths forward, and all of them carry serious risks. First, the United States could escalate further, attempt to directly control or intercept Iranian shipping. But that risks confrontation not just with Iran, but potentially with other nations whose ships are in the same waters. Second, a deal could emerge, possibly involving major global powers. The Strait reopens, but under new conditions. Conditions that may shift economic influence away from Washington. And third, the conflict drags on, oil stays above $100, gas prices rise, political pressure increases, and public opinion begins to shift. Because at the end of the day, wars are not just fought on battlefields. They are fought in economies, in alliances, and in perception. Right now, the Strait of Hormuz is no longer just a passage. It's a bargaining chip, a pressure point, a test of global influence. And the most important question is no longer who has the strongest military. It's who controls the system around it, because control of the system determines the outcome of the war. And as this situation continues to unfold, the world is watching very closely, because what happens here won't stay here. It will ripple across global markets, alliances, and the balance of power itself. And the next move from any side could change everything.